Let's just play a little jazz. Come on.
For me, the action is the chess. Amen.
Fiend for wheels. Fiend for wheels. That's why I thought you was a cool guy. Cool guy.
Hello, welcome to Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as usual, is John Bernard.
Hey, it's me.
John, there comes a time in the lifespan of every podcast where two unremarkable middle-aged men talk about movies that they have to talk about Heat. It's
true. This is true.
A coming of age of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd say probably for the plurality of podcasts of our ilk, there's no more common first episode than Heat. And we took our sweet time getting here, but it's time for our podcast to finally come of age. And to help us do that, and I guess in this analogy, the rabbi here to usher us into Heat adulthood, Mr. Chris Exantus.
Hello. How's it going?
Hey,
It's going good.
mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about Heat. It's going to be great.
We're talking about Heat.
What's your Michael Mann relationship, Chris?
So I would say that for me, I think that the first Michael Mann film that I really connected with was Thief. I just kind of, I think I was really young, and I was at a time where I was just kind of watching anything and all recommendations. And I was also really into crime novels. So I got deep into the Parker novels by Richard Stark, who is a pseudonym for was it Donald Westlake? And I heard about this movie, and I remember just checking it out. I'm like, this is everything that I want a movie to be. Just the atmosphere, the dialogue, the action. It's so cool. It's the coolest thing ever, and that's been a movie that's been kind of has stuck with me for so long. And I have seen other Michael Mann films. Obviously, I've seen Heat several times. I've seen Collateral. I've seen Public Enemy. I've seen so a lot of his oeuvre, but I think that's the one that's always remained special to me.
That's surprising. For people of our generation, I feel like it's unusual for Thief to be our actual entryway in. Even though it's the first movie. I
think what it is that I think it was I remember at a time, and I honestly I remember I was out of high school, and I think I was just really into movies. I was really into movies, and I just wanted to watch everything, and I was taking things out of the college library, and I just I'm actually thinking maybe did I see Heat before Thief? I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I saw Thief first. But regardless, I think as much as Heat's a masterpiece, obviously, and there's not much to say about it. I mean, we'll say things about it, but I mean, Heat just doesn't, explain itself. But I think Thief,
it's so much bigger and more maximalist than Thief.
Right.
Thief is almost just as well made in ways, but it's just such smaller scale. I think
right,
we were talking before. I could compare it to that if Thief is the mean streets, then Heat is Goodfellas.
I agree. It's very scrappy. In a way that Heat isn't.
We also said something there that feels so true to me about Michael Mann movies. Is there's for at least a certain ilk of our straight guy movie guy, Michael Mann movies just well, fuck, this is what movies should be. This is everything, or this is the best version of all this. In some ways, Heat is the crime movie. If you have The Godfather as the crime movie on the gangster side, this is the cops and robbers movie, and every crime movie after it has to measure up to it in some way.
I think it is probably the archetypal cops and robbers film. You're not going to make a better cops and robbers movie than Heat, and there's a lot of reasons for that, obviously, but maybe the most because neither of them are presented as the good guy or the bad guy here. They're both kind of just. You're kind of rooting for everybody in a sense. I think that breaks down a little. I think everyone has their favorites, but you can't say one of these characters is the protagonist and the other is the antagonist. They're both the protagonist at opposite ends.
you could say that. I mean, by the end, yeah, Vincent is the good guy, and Neil is the bad guy. By the
Man,
film.
I actually had some thoughts about that. Actually, I actually did watch it like right after, I liked it like after like work. I just like sat down, like I'm gonna watch it, and I actually have some pretty good thoughts on like who do I think comes off as more of a good guy, and the answer actually might shock
No,
you.
I'm definitely I'm more invested in De Niro by far.
Yeah, I think everyone is a little.
Right. But I think in terms of like, I don't know if you want to get into it right now, but like I just kind of was thinking a lot in terms of like I think I talked to you, Al, the other day about the Parker aesthetic and like how like Michael Mann seems to be kind of using that here. But like so many times while I'm watching this movie, I'm like, wait a minute, but Parker wouldn't do this. Parker wouldn't do that. Like, huh? Like, because like I know Parker. Parker is a guy who like if something goes wrong, he gets out and he's like, whatever, I'm done. And then De Niro does the exact opposite of that. And I was slightly confused for like, with this plot. Then I realized, oh, this is by design because Neil is kind of full of shit in a lot of ways. And I kind of realized that like now where so much of the things that he says and so much of the things that he does seems less about this is who I am and more like this is who I'm trying to be. And then there's several times where that clearly isn't who he is, and he makes choices that go against his, his.
I think
his
it's mainly it.
Well, he's a monk having a crisis of faith. That's like
That's good.
It's what's going on with him. Like he knows all the things. The reason he dies is because of the rules he breaks here. Like he breaks his own rules, and because he has lived his life by these rules, that is the result. I mean, it's inevitable absolutely. In a way, that like once he stops doing what he's always lived his life by, then it's over. Yeah. Like
I would argue that the reason why he dies is because he's more empathetic.
Yeah.
Like the Al Pacino character,
he can't shut it off. Yeah,
does not give a shit. Like he is the real deal. And like there are several times where he's forced to console someone where he clearly just does not want to be there at all. Like a woman has to deal with like obviously the subplot with the I always forget his name, but the guy who like killed like prostitutes. Wangro, and he has to deal with this mother, and most characters would empathize with them, but he's like, I just don't want to be here, and just get her away from me, and like just because that's not what he cares about, and it's clearly obviously, and I think that's why I think we empathetically like side with Neil, because despite the fact that Vincent is a cop, he clearly does not give a shit about the law. He does not care about morality. It is literally just a thrill of the hunt for him.
Well, I don't
know if I go that far. I mean,
I think I actually would though.
I think it's primarily the thrill of the hunt, and he cops to that. But that is, I think that he does have feelings under there. But I also think you're right, totally right about what you said about like the De Niro side of it. And like, I think Neil McCauley would agree with you that the reason he dies because he violates his own internal philosophy and all the rules he has set up for himself.
Yeah, if he lived by his rules, he definitely would have just walked out of there with money.
Yeah.
Well, if he lived by a rule, he would have been Parker. And because I know, like, again, Parker would not have, when the initial thing goes bad, the initial heist goes bad, Parker would have stopped everything and been like, head on the lam for like 5 months. He wouldn't have immediately gone for a bank job. Like, there are so many times where I'm just like, this isn't what Parker would do. Like, Parker would just drop what he was doing and be like, nah. Like,
well, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, it's all very explicit in this because that is kind of a nice thing about Michael Mann movies too. Is the characters generally say what they mean and do what they say. And he lays it all out in the back half of this movie. Look, the rules say we walk away now. We don't go home. We don't pack. But I'm considering making this exception and taking the extra stretch to go for this bank under the cop's nose because I'm so close to being out and done. And he knows he tells us in the audience through John Voight and Tom Sizemore and everybody else he lectures about it that this is a bigger risk than I would normally take, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway.
Right, the risk is worth it. Right, that he keeps saying that the risk is worth it.
Yeah, he wants out of this. He doesn't want to put up with this shit anymore. He sees what Edie has to offer for him, and it's just too appealing.
I mean, I think what's so interesting is that it's not even a matter because I think so. The scene where, you know, where he basically talks to Chris's wife and like he's like he goes into her home when he's like cheating on him, and he's like, "You gotta get back with him. You're gonna give him one more chance." It feels like you're initially set up to obviously be like, "Oh, he only cares about the heist," because this is who Neil is. He's a hard ass. He's like he knows that if Chris doesn't have a functional home life, he can't do the job. But then there's that scene where they're at the dinner table, and the man looks like miserable. He's seeing all his friends, and they're all happy. And he's like, "Damn." Like, and I find that so interesting that I'm actually surprised I didn't catch that before. That
he's lonely.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's the eternal struggle where the man he claims to be, but he no longer wants to be that man.
Yeah, being utterly self-sufficient and alone but not lonely by his estimation, like that's
right. Yeah, it's alone but not
that
lonely.
still gets boring after a while. I would think. And I mean, he looks kind of sad as the only single man at that table. He doesn't look as like miserable as Pacino looks in the comparable scenes, just because Pacino has like
right. He looks he does not want to be there at all.
Pacino has the added misery in those scenes of also being like crashing on coke.
Of course, yeah. One of the great unspoken things in this movie is that Vincent Hanna high on coke the whole time, confirmed by Pacino. Yeah,
they supposed to say in the book, right? Like I think like they say explicitly that he's on some kind of drug explicitly.
Well, in like the later like sequel portions of the Heat 2 book, he is downgraded to using Natalie Portman's Adderall prescription. And there is a part, in the prequel portions of Heat 2, it's also there's scenes of him going to score coke to keep himself up on the chase all night, and it's all over this performance. I mean.
Yeah. Like if Vincent Hanna is not on coke, then Pacino's on coke is the only way to read this.
Then it's even more deranged.
I mean
that this is what he thought a normal person was like at that juncture.
But no, I mean this is sort of the harbinger of crazy Pacino, right? This is who he was for the next 8 years, kind of. And but this is like the good version of it. This is where it's like really awesome and lands. I mean, it's fine. I think it's always kind of fun. But I don't know, when he plays the devil, it works in that. But
he's already won an Oscar for Scent of a Woman at this point. So like that is where
you're right.
He really debuts. If we're not counting Scarface, which is it's some of the same thing.
No, Scent of a Woman is talking about. Yeah.
I mean, here it makes sense. However, it is a thing. Like when I watch it these days, as much as it is a two-hander where you're not really supposed to prefer one or the over the other, I prefer De Niro so much just because I'm not saying Vincent Hanna doesn't feel like a real person, because cokeheads are real people and asshole cops are real people. And even when he's at his most like deranged, it is deliberately sort of a put on where it's a tactic to keep his
great ass
to keep us in
great. He's got great ass.
And when he's doing that, or when he's accosting Albert and singing about flying to Phoenix or whatever, it's weirdness, but it's calculated to keep the informants off balance. Because Mann goes into this in interviews very explicitly, and in the Heat 2 book, even it's there on the page, but it's also there in the performance that he's controlled at other times. But part of the thing is informants will lie to you if they get their feet under you. It's just how the fish swim,
right.
And so you have to keep them off balance right from the time you walk in the door to sort of get the intel spilling out of their mouth a little more raw, and that makes sense with this character in a way. I don't know if it does in Scent of a Woman because I haven't seen Scent of a Woman, but I'm still more attracted to the Neil like cool professionalism aspect of it than this wild gesticulation. He's just a fucking weirdo.
I mean, I guess so. I consider this a top shelf performance from both of them. I like the Pacino performance way more now than I used to. I think it's easy for me to get behind that character because I see what the totality of the film is and see the tactics he's using and see the ways that, he's sort of, he's the opposite side of what De Niro's doing, but they still have a similar methodology. Yeah, it's so cool. And he's just fun and he's very quotable. Like everything he says in this movie. Underrated line reading, I think, is when he comes home and is like, I seen 3 dead bodies on the sidewalk in Ventura. You think I'm gonna be able to care if the
No, it's.
chicken?
I'm
got,
sorry.
He throws
No, that's,
chicken.
I was
trail off.
I was going to use that as an example of like we can't get down into the weeds of parsing every line reading in this movie because they're all kind of perfect. But like as an example of one just perfect line reading, he does right. The line is about how I'm sorry if the goddamn chicken got overcooked, and he trails off into overcooked, and like in a way that doesn't even make sense. Like it would be that the chicken got cold. It's not that they were cooking the chicken and wouldn't stop cooking it until they got home. But because he's crashing on coke and has just lost like the trailer, like he's trailing off, the misspeaking actually sells it even better. You know, it's the way of you can lecture people on how I couldn't care less is the wrong way of saying it, which you mean is or I could care less is the wrong way. You mean you couldn't care less, but it's like but if they cared enough to get the syntax right, it would undermine the sentiment, and that's. When calling the chicken overcooked does that for me.
And idly spinning the drumstick as it's such a good moment. He's full of great moments like that. It's a very authentic feeling performance from him and kind of from everyone.
And the performance would not work if you didn't have the diner scene where he dials it so far down.
Oh.
So the diner scene is so interesting to me because I'm thinking this is probably like a 90s equivalent of like a Marvel like oh man, it's De Niro, it's Al Pacino, because that was the thing, right? That was the thing. Like that was like the first time these two, these are the biggest actors.
Oh yeah,
in like the world, or at least in the world, and like this is the first time because like obviously. What's it called? Godfather Part 2 doesn't really count, right? They're both in the same movie, but
they're in different timelines. They don't share scenes. Yeah,
right. But this was the film where it does. I mean, it certainly does feel like absolutely like this was made specifically for fan service, but it works because it works within both the film as well as it just tells you that like these two men are like one in the same.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason why it doesn't come off as fan service, it doesn't feel like Mann made this movie just because he wanted to get Pacino and De Niro facing off with each other, the way that maybe like a Scorsese movie can feel to me sometimes. But he does make this movie specifically to get to this scene. This is what the kernel of Heat was, the seed that sprouted all this other stuff. And part of the reason we know about that is because of the existence of LA Takedown, which have you guys ever checked that out, by the way?
I watched parts of it. I didn't make it through the whole movie. I certainly watched the diner scene a number of times.
LA Takedown is the like TV pilot movie of the week version of Heat, where it's like a 90-minute version, and it is striking in that like it is exact scenes from Heat, some of the same dialogue, all the same characters, but it's just fascinating to watch. Like, oh, this is what would happen if you took Heat and you did it with bad actors in the lead role, and a bad sound mix and bad lighting and bad editing.
It's interesting in that way. Yes.
And that just sort of like demonstrates to you all the story is still there. The central dynamic is still, that is so interesting, is still right there, but it is undercut by just the Mann professionalism in every aspect of everything in his good movies is so much part of the aesthetic, part of what sells this. Like,
absolutely agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think obviously just to get off a bit from Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, I just want to talk about the film itself. And like, I think the thing that I just kind of love is how the film is edited and shot to engross the viewer into LA. Where you have like so many of these like long takes of characters kind of like chilling their environments or like just kind of doing something. Like it's not choppy editing. It's not edited to like kind of go and like, for impact, but instead you're just kind of like, you're allowed to exist with the characters in a way that I think that I found it really enthralling and really entertaining.
And he made a big deal about not wanting to shoot in parts of LA that had been on screen before. So there's like he shot on location everywhere, but also locations that had not been in movies previously.
Michael Mann, one of the great communicators of the feeling of a city, I feel like. We saw this in Thief too. And we will in Miami Vice probably too. Captures Oh yeah, and Collateral. That just he just captures the feel of the city, and not none of the stuff that you're familiar with. It feels just like like this feels like the most LA movie ever.
Oh, absolutely, like the ultimate LA movie. Yeah.
And I've been there a number of times, and I've never had heat-like experiences in LA, but somehow just the you don't even see a fucking palm tree this whole film, and somehow this still feels like like the city of LA's soul caught on screen.
I have to.
It's almost as if the city of LA is a character.
Yeah, it's almost
I think actually De Niro takes cover behind a palm tree during the big gunfight at one point. And it's I've seen it now so many times that I like all the beats of it are so familiar to me. But also, it's like I'm sitting there looking and going like, "Oh man, that's not enough cover, man. That's too skinny. Get out."
Still, there's more palm trees in Halloween than there are in LA.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Very, very well rebutted. No. Well, and another way beyond the geography of it, like just looking back to LA Takedown, if you actually watch that, it's such an object lesson in the value of like diversity in casting. Beyond like any like soapboxing about sociological concerns about representation, like in the LA Takedown version, the Neil character has his crew, and it's a bunch of like brown-haired white guys, and the De Niro character or the Pacino character has his 4 guys too, and they're a bunch of brown-haired white guys, and they're just so you don't get a sense of any of them. I mean, there's not as much time to flesh them out anyway. Like the Val Kilmer character is not a character. The Sizemore one is, oddly, but you just flip it over to Heat, and it's trying to do so much more, but it gets so much more mileage just out of everybody in De Niro's crew is immediately recognizable because Val Kilmer's got a blonde ponytail. Tom Sizemore has the Clooney salt and pepper cut, and Danny Trejo is like the most recognizable, like distinctive character actor ever. And then on Pacino's side, you don't get as much time with Pacino's crew, but it's like one's Michael T. Williamson, one's Wes Studi, one's Ted Levine with a giant mustache, like, and then one's just a nondescript white guy that his personality is 404 file not found.
Yeah, he's the forgettable one.
But having Wes Studi, Danny Trejo, Michael T. Williams, like these are character actors that just immediately pop on screen. You can differentiate them so cleanly and quickly that like it's such a practical storytelling level, like that you see the benefit of diversity.
Oh, the ensemble casting on this is amazing. It is the best collection 90s character actors outside of like Con Air. This is just everyone you want to see, and they're all like doing great, serious work here too. And I mean, I love getting Wes Studi back right after Last Mohicans. He's terrific in this movie. They're all great. They all add so much weight and distinctiveness. So you're following them. I mean, this is sort of like I've heard Sam Raimi talk about this. Like he wants to cast known actors all over the place, so audiences have a relationship with these characters without them actually having that much to do.
Right.
And that really works here. Like you feel it when Ted Levine dies, it's not a character who's done much, but no, that's Vincent Hanna's partner.
I think
Levine.
I think the movie does smart work because you're right. Like it's not like they don't do that thing where he's like, oh man, this is the last time I'm going to go out there, with my wife. They don't do that stuff. But I think the way they use
we don't know how many days from retirement he is explicitly.
It's implied.
Yeah, it's all kind of there in the mustache.
But I think how he's used, and he's recognizable because you've seen him in other things, and how he's used in the movie as well. I think it's pretty impactful. So that when he bites it, it's an oh shit moment, and also. And I mean, okay, I didn't know when you wanted to actually start talking about that scene. I don't know. Should I hold off on it?
We're gonna have to circle back to the diner at some point.
You know what? Do you want to just go back to the diner?
Well, maybe one of the first things I was saying here was how every movie, like every crime movie, has to measure up to this afterwards, and they all seem to come up short somewhere. And
like Town or
The Town might be my favorite of like the direct knockoffs.
But it's such a Heat knockoff.
Oh yeah, I mean, but yeah. So like the gunfight, obviously, like the realism and the detail and the robbery elements and the high end investigation, like on the police side stuff. The doomed romance elements. Like, I mean, one thing that and obviously we talked about you're not going to get a better version of the "we're not so different, you and I" thing than the diner sequence.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's the ultimate. I mean, they did it without even saying that,
Yeah.
And
You get that across, like this thing. Most times, it feels like they try and oversell that a little bit, almost because they don't buy it. But man, believes like that these guys are your goals are totally different, but they see the world in the same way, in some very fundamental way. They're both existentialists, is what it comes down to, and that's what's
There's appreciation for the methodology. I mean, well, that's the thing. Like, they're actually mere opposites in so many ways. Like, they're not twins. They're very different in the way they conduct themselves. I just think that it's the nature of being a cop, the nature of being Vincent Hanna, is that he has to have this sort of criminal empathy and understand these guys, and he understands this guy so completely.
Well, that's kind of the Will Graham thing, right? From Manhunter.
Yes, it is. And it's also like that's his form of the sort of professionalism. That's his version of Macaulay's, sort of deep underlying respect for process and the rules of the game. He understands that because he has to, and just the act of having that empathy means he has the same professionalism. It's so cool. It's really, really great. Everyone loves the duality of these characters. Obviously, that's the big thing. But it's not overrated. It is fantastic, and the spine of this whole thing working as well as it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we talked about them not being twins, because I don't feel like it's a thing of like, oh, it's there, but for the grace of God goes Vincent Hanna. Like, I don't think Vincent Hanna was going to be a criminal. But the similarity is in the way that they both accept and embrace risk and these incredibly risky jobs and commit to things.
right,
Yeah.
And that is like even rarer somehow. Like, that's so rare that they like really like bond in that brief, meeting at the diner.
It's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. It's electric. I mean, like but it's also like it's in many ways in his writing. It's the filming, but also in many ways it's because it's Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and like you basically would want to be able to see like at the heights of their career, where it's like I can watch these two just talk in a restaurant for like 2 hours and just like that's it.
Yeah, it's
something for that. I mean, they're real good in this, and it's kind of just a pleasure to see them work. And then you get them together for this huge moment halfway through, and just like, oh shit, here it comes, and it delivers completely. That's that's remarkable. They've tried to recapture this a few times, and I think they're both incredible in The Irishman. But there's no scene in The Irishman as good as that scene.
I mean, I think it might be a little bit easier for Al Pacino to say it's probably like the last great thing that he did.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, they just said The Irishman. But,
oh yeah, no, okay, yeah, you're right. Why did I forget he was in that? He is, yeah. Holy shit, I completely
he's
forgot.
Done some stuff. He's done a few things, but it's there aren't a lot of movies like that are as good as Heat that come after Heat for either of these guys. That's true.
No, and for as unhurried as that scene is, it's also like there's a restraint on the movie's part that it doesn't contrive multiple meetings for them. It's all that one centerpiece scene, and then they shoot each other at the end, or one shoots the other.
And there's no like writing letters to one another or any of that shit.
Right. Yeah.
There's no sort of filmic bullshit in it.
There was a temptation to have like contrive another phone call or something between them.
Yeah.
Or even totally, just like, a break in the shootout where they're both like in cover and Pacino's yelling out like, "Hey, Neil," and they yell, "Remember that call back to our conversation in the diner?"
Oh, I'm glad he did not. I almost wonder.
He's above shit like that. He is.
How much did Mann have to fight to get like these scenes as perfect as they were? Because I'm sure there were exec notes on how to I kind of want to go to the shootout because I have so many thoughts on the shootout. But like ultimately, my thing is that that scene does not get made in 2023 or 2024. It just doesn't. For a number of reasons.
The diner or the shootout?
Oh, the shootout.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're skipping over multiple heists to get to the shootout.
I know.
Like even like the opening armored car heist would be the highlight of any of these other Heat knockoff movies, really.
Yeah.
And you kind of forget about it every time. Like every time I restart Heat, I'm like, oh yeah, this is how it starts. This is fucking awesome.
Right? Yeah.
What I think is so incredible about that is that, this movie opens with these guys killing cops, just killing unarmed cops. Now, yes, there's Wayne Grove.
Those are rent-a-cops, by the way. I don't.
Sure.
They're
But,
not real cops.
It doesn't matter. That makes them more sympathetic. But the fact that we can still get on board with these guys is incredible after that. And they have their ways of doing that, like the Wayne Grove is the bad guy who he's the one who's really responsible. But then there's the third one that they just like, well, might as well kill this guy too.
That's it's very interesting that you're absolutely right. Like where, like, you're right. Like, despite the fact that they do kill three people,
Mm-hmm.
and again, they kill more, that we're still on their side.
But especially the third one that's in absolutely cold blood.
Yeah.
That Pacino lays out for us later is like, they know it's already a murder one beef now, so why leave a witness? And like the cold calculation of that is, especially as the introduction to these people, seems like it digs them in such a hole, but they get out of it so quickly.
They do. And I think part of that is deciding to kill Wayne Grove right away. I think
deciding to kill Wayne Grove.
That other good diner scene.
Introducing Fichtner as the stuffed shirt, this guy has no principles like they do. Like their principles allow for cold-blooded murder, but they have their rules.
They'd rather not.
Yeah.
Well, I think I do think that you can see, like, thinking about it now, you can see how the film does get away with it, because they almost immediately try to kill Wayne Grove. And also the deaths themselves, like the second guy who died, it's self-defense, and the third guy, it's no one enjoys it. You can tell that no one enjoys it. It's just a cold calculation. Oh, we have to do this. So at the very least, we understand that they're not psychopaths.
Yeah, they're fucking pissed. They're just like, God damn it.
They give us the psychopath right to stand next to them to draw the contrast as starkly as possible.
Right, exactly. Like we had to have done it. Like we have no other option, and we have to do this because otherwise, we're fucked. So,
and then
the other diner scene, by the way, that diner scene where they kick Wayne Grove's ass, Tom Sizemore should have got an Oscar nomination just for the way he looks at that guy.
Yeah.
After De Niro hits him on the face, at the table, that guy starts to, hey, what the? And Sizemore just sort of leans over.
He doesn't even say hey. He doesn't open his mouth. He just looks up, and Sizemore cocks his head out to the side. It's such a perfect shot, and it's just God, that's so good. I mean, talking about the town, like one of the best moments in the town is they're coming off of the big robbery there, and as they're like getting ready to get out of their car, ditch their car, they're still in the masks and assault rifles, and they see that there's a cop parked right next to them as they're about getting out, and he just looks at their assault rifles and masks, looks them up and down, and then looks away, and they're like, okay.
I remember people laughed, the whole audience when I saw it in the theater just like lost it at that scene. It's such a great moment.
But that owes so much to that moment in Heat, and that Tom Sizemore career owes so much to that one moment in Heat, I feel like.
Yeah, it might be the greatest moment of his career, actually.
It probably is.
I think that could be argued. Although he's pretty awesome in the 90s, right? Like, what a reliable character actor Tom Sizemore was in the 90s. Odd to say. But you would always count on him to kind of kick ass, anything he did. This, Private Ryan, stuff like this, boy, that's a guy who delivers.
Yeah, and he makes such an impression here with very little screen time compared to, say, Kilmer or De Niro. But that is what's one of the great pleasures of Heat. I mean, as much as this is billed as a big heavyweight bout between Pacino and De Niro, really, like, the undercard is where a lot of the action is. And Kilmer and Sizemore and Michael T. Williamson gets way more material than you ever, you never remember how much good stuff he gets to do on the edges of this movie. And hell, Tone Loke's tearing it up for a minute here, but
Hank Azaria,
I kind of laughed when I saw Hank Azaria. Like, oh yeah, I forgot he's in this.
Yeah, and William Fichtner, and Voight. Oh man,
it's an incredible ensemble.
I was talking about the value of diversity. It's great costuming, and
oh man, yeah.
We need to get a lot from this guy without him saying a lot and without a ton of screen time, and just the way they do him up immediately differentiates him from everybody else. And Tom Noonan, great stuff in here.
Always, yeah. Could have used more Noonan, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like the swept back hair and the bolo tie and the mustache on Voight. Never seen him quite look like that. It's so authentic and so specific. I think the specificity of all the way these guys looks is so much of what the storytelling is. Wayne Grow. Here's an interesting thing about Wayne Grow. He's like the only guy in this that I'm not like, oh, I know him from many other films.
Right.
And that kind of works in the movie's favor in that he's sort of the fly in the ointment. He's the fuck up, he's the one we don't have a prior relationship and so therefore cannot trust to do his job.
Well, we have Ted Levine to thank for that, because Levine was originally tapped to be Wayne Grow, and he said, and his thing was, I've already been Buffalo Bill. I can't be another psychotic killer. So just make me one of the cops. And so they got this other guy. The actor went on to have some problems of his own. Apparently went to jail, and to your Michael Mann, tell it everybody in jail just called him Wayne Grow. But the story thing that the Wayne Grow provides, and what is interesting about the Michael Mann sect that we keep harping on, is how Wayne Grow is, I think, positioned to be contemptible in relation to other guys because he is sloppy and unprofessional in his killing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
As much as because he is a Nazi who also brutally murders prostitutes as a serial killer. Like, they're laying on, quite a few layers into this 7-layer dip of nastiness in Wayne Grow. But it feels like Mann's real contempt for him comes from the unprofessionalism.
Him being sloppy. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, of course he's a serial killer. He's sloppy.
Right.
No respect for the craft.
Natural. One clearly follows the other. No, it's all. He's sort of the only character that seems a little over the top, I guess you'd say. I don't know. It works. It works fine because those guys exist, obviously.
There's a lot going on with that guy,
and I think there's restraint. Like, they could have easily done this whole subplot. Like, they kind of do talk about like the fact that he is a serial killer, but then they kind of don't really do much with it, like, at all. Like, no. So they could have, like, and obviously, like, we talked about it in the second book, they actually do go all in on that. Or in the sequel prequel. But in here, it's like, it's just kind of a way to be like, it's not just that he's sloppy, but also he's a rapist and a murderer, and you should definitely want him to die. So,
right. I mean, I guess all that we're trying to do is get to that moment where De Niro is in the clear and has the option. If you take this off ramp, you can go kill Wayne Grow.
Oh, man.
It's all just to get to that moment. And look, I showed this to my wife, first time she'd seen it the other night, and it went good, fortunately. I was very happy. But that moment when he takes the off ramp to go kill Wayne Grow, she fist pumped. She was like, yes. And I was like, oh,
man.
Yeah, you don't know it's gonna cost him.
Right. You can see this movie so many times, and the way it's filmed, the way it's edited, there's always those moments where you're like, oh, maybe they do get away with it this time. Maybe he does make the right choice.
When a movie can pull that off, when you can watch beautiful. It multiple times, you're like, maybe this time it'll be different. That's a sign of a great film.
Well, because they get away. I mean, part of, I think, the way they fool you there is that Kilmer does get away, and that it's
great.
That sticks with you, I think, subconsciously, in a way of like, it's the escape is so real. It's so right there. It's not a tunnel painted on the wall by the Roadrunner. Like, he could get away, but you don't want to. I mean, and look, would that be just as effective if Wayne Grow was just a sloppy murdered Nazi who killed Danny Trejo and his wife, but didn't also murder prostitutes on the side? We'd probably still be into it, but it doesn't make you.
Do you think that was too much for the excess? Do you think
I don't know.
You could argue it. I don't think you need it. Probably, it certainly makes him hateful. Yeah,
I do think the scene's pretty good though. The scene where with the prostitute and he goes.
A lot of bad scenes in this. Yeah,
like even as something that could have been so shitty and so awful, but it's actually kind of like I kind of like the acting here where he's like, you have no truth telling, you don't know what this is. The Grim Reaper's calling for you, and I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of a cold line.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Mann could do serial killer stuff if he wanted to. If he did Manhunter,
He
it's
has.
about the only
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Oh, I guess they actually never really did.
I mean, Collateral is like sort of borderline sometimes. It's not in the way you mean.
Yeah, but
We
it's
don't
for
really count hitmen as serial killers, though. That's the thing, though.
it's for pay.
he's a bit special though. He's a little weirder than regular. But yeah, like I don't know. Like he doesn't respect serial killers that much though. Like in the way he respects thieves. You know,
Well, this is
like
These have a code. That's why.
yeah. Well, yeah.
no, he respects professionalism.
A discipline. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what he does now. I mean, we talked about this in Manhunter somewhat, and then Chris and I were talking offline about sort of comparing Mann and Aronofsky and Fincher, and sort of how they have some similar interests, but I think like there's just particular vocabulary words that fit one over the other. Where because I think Fincher is about compulsion, and Aronofsky is about obsession, and Mann is about perfectionism, and all of those like. Obsession kind of umbrella terms, all of those things, but not quite, because Mann does not respect compulsion at all. And Fincher is fascinated by it, even as he's a very controlled director. And that's why Mann has a special contempt for serial killers on top of them being, brutal murderers, is that they're unprofessional. They don't have their eyes on the prize. They're doing it for their own gratification, not for the score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you could find, I don't know, there is a sort of process-oriented nature of serial killers you would think would be an in for him. Like that they are super professional in their way. Or I guess they're not. I guess I'm thinking of movie serial killers more than I am real guys. Real guys are compulsive, and they'll like go
and sloppy.
Yeah, they'll make stupid mistakes, and they'll just like go back to the scene of the crime, all the dumb shit that they get caught for. I mean, I don't know. I'm comparing like 7 killers, guys like that, which are.
But that's the other thing that Mann has, if not contempt for, like what differentiates him from the pack is that he will not go in for that movie bullshit.
Right.
That's what differentiates a Mann movie from whether it's Last of the Mohicans or Heat or even Manhunter. We talk about what's striking about Manhunter compared to the Red Dragon novel was it tones down some of the bullshit. Even as it's so stylized.
Yeah, it does no interest in
cinematography.
his personal mythology. Does not care about the Red Dragon at all. Yeah.
So all of it, whether it's his historical epic or a serial killer movie or his crime movie, it's going to be remarkable for how much less movie bullshit there is than
interesting. Yeah, I think that's actually that's interesting.
And the thieves are real. Like this is how thieves really are, apparently,
or were in like the 60s, 70s at least.
You're right. Did you see that Neil McCauley was a real fucking dude?
Oh yeah.
I couldn't believe this. I couldn't believe that basically everything that happened in this movie is real.
Yeah.
Wait, seriously?
Oh yeah. Yes. Sorry, I've been so steeped in reading like Mann interviews and Heat interviews and special features that I've kind of just presumed everybody else as read up on this as I am. But yeah, no. The Vincent Hanna character. Well, it's not so much the Vincent Hanna character, but there was a Chicago cop that was a robbery homicide division type guy that Mann was close with in the 70s, and he told him the story that this is the thing that got him to make LA Takedown, and then Heat because this colonel he's chasing this high end safecracker bank robber, and he knows who the guy is, and at one point he runs into him just outside of a laundromat, and the guy has already like seen him and knows who he is, and so he figures, well, it's a coincidence, but there's no point in pretending that I'm somebody else. So I'll just I'll have to buy him a cup of coffee. We sat down, we had a little chat, we went on our ways, and later he shot that guy to death at a robbery.
Oh wow! Wow!
And Mann seized on that, and enough to take 2 bites of the apples.
The guy's name was actually Neil McCauley too. That I couldn't believe. I was just like, oh shit!
Wow, and Waingro
could do that.
Another even smaller kernel of things. Waingro was a real Chicago criminal that ratted on a bunch of mob guys, and then eventually was found nailed to the wall of a shack in Mexico, according to Mann.
Whoa! Damn.
Yep.
I don't know how much that.
I gotta look some of this stuff up. God damn.
Yeah. And so the guys, the cop, I think, was like a consultant on Thief, is how they got hooked up together originally. I think maybe was even Dennis Farina's partner or just a colleague around the same time. And I think his name is Charlie Adamson, if I remember correctly. And he killed the real McCauley. That's, I think, what feels like the most movie bullshit part of this, where they have this sit down and and connect on a soul bond, and then later on he has to kill his soul brother in a shootout. That's the part that's real, like based out of real life.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, the botched sting really happened too with Macaulay. That exactly as it went down in this movie. Like a cop accidentally made a noise in their ambush shot. It was heard, and they just walked away. Like
that's such a great moment. That's a great moment too.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
shot of like De Niro looking to the character, and as he's seeing Pacino, and then there's that shot with the infrared. And so great moment.
And and Pacino's just all like neon white and black in the night vision, but he's framed in the exact same way as the reverse shot of Pacino staring down at like
what a good movie. I swear to God, this is the best fucking movie. I had so much fun with this.
It really, I don't. I was actually thinking, is this like a perfect movie? Because I think this is the perfect movie. I don't think there's like I can complain about the Waingro thing, but I don't really want to. I could maybe complain about Natalie Portman, but I don't really want to. I don't. I think like at least for me. I mean, obviously it's subjective and all that, but for me, I think it's pretty much perfect the way it is.
I mean, look, if I'm going to fast forward any parts of this movie, it's going to be Waingro on his own or Natalie Portman drama. So you're right about that. Those are, I mean, technically the worst parts of the movie, but like
it's 10 minutes combined. I mean, put it all together, that's 10 minutes of screen time.
In an average like B+ crime movie, you wouldn't complain about those scenes as being bad or anything. You'd be like, yeah, it's fine stuff. I mean, if we're picking real nits, there's like two bits that ring kind of false to me. One is how Kilmer gets away. That they
would have his picture. They would have his picture,
right? And the part where she waves him off is fantastic. Love that sequence. But then McKelty Wilson radios in like, check him out anyway, and it's like,
yeah.
And then they let him go because he has a driver's license that says somebody else's name on it. It's like, what are you checking him out for? What you're expecting him to be? Not expecting him to give you a license, a driver's license that says Chris Shaherless, wanted criminal.
I think it's one of those things where like, it's one of those things where like, honestly, because it's a movie, and I think it works on an emotional level and a logical one.
Yes,
because you're not wrong. Like it's absolutely, that's absolutely, he should have got you. You're absolutely, and there's an argument there that like, man, probably should have wrote it in a different way, but emotionally, especially in terms of like providing tension, I think it works. And I think we're like, everyone's already dead. At least having one of them live is good enough.
Yeah,
one of them has to, just for the randomness of it. The idea
how will they make Heat 2?
Well,
you think about that?
Yeah.
How would they make Heat 2?
I can't believe that we're in a world where Heat 2 is happening, maybe. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. That might be good.
I can't believe we're in a world where Heat 2 is going to happen. And I am like, all right, let's do it. Like, it sounded such a terrible idea when I heard the premise. But just to stay Heat 1 for a minute. Yeah. One, I think having him get away gives you a little bit of extra hope for De Niro to get away too.
Right.
Cash more cruelly, which is good. And also, just it's a little too neat if every one of them gets shot to death. Pacino shoots 2 of the 4 of them dead himself, like personally. Because you kind of forget he shoots Sizemore because that's over so quickly when it happens.
And he also shoots what's his name? Drucker, right?
Well, Drucker's
Breeden.
It's not clear.
I don't know if he gets,
it's not clear who gets the kill shot on him, and they just rain bullets on the car. It could be Wes Studi. It could be Drucker.
I like to think it's Studi.
Oh no, not Drucker. I'm sorry. Who am I thinking of?
Dennis Haysbert, Breeden.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't mention Haysbert when I was running down the undercard. Also, great stuff from him. Like, but
probably cuttable, but that scene when he quits is awesome.
Yeah. I actually don't think it's cuttable. I actually think every time I watch this movie, his subplot makes me so sad.
I know. It is sad.
It's the saddest thing ever. And I think actually how it ends is actually it's perfect in how grim it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty grim.
It's just
his girlfriend finding out on TV. Yeah. Oh, bummer. Mm-hmm.
Somehow Trejo's end is even grimmer, but to finish the nitpicking thought though, I mean, the way you write that is just don't have him when she comes in and after waving him off and says it's not him, just have them go like, all right, be quiet. We had the other stakeout go bad because somebody made a tiny noise. If they just say let him go because they believe her, that's more believable than check him out anyway. And then like, what were you looking
I think
for?
That's more, yeah.
What were you expecting?
I think that's more for the audience.
Yeah.
And I think by then, I think the movie's so confident enough that it already has you by, the seat of your pants that you're going to allow it. Like, maybe in subsequent viewings, you might be like, wait a minute. But in the moment, you'll allow it.
It totally works emotionally, like you said.
It's such a memorable moment, too. It's such a memorable image seeing Ashley Judd up on the balcony.
Yeah.
Doing that hand move that we now know from Heat 2 is a blackjack move, which is how they met. Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Because, oh, man.
Yeah, because they met in Vegas. And man, I guarantee you knew all of that while filming Heat 1.
Do you
Absolutely.
think, so I was wondering that, because I actually read a little bit, because I know, Al, you gave me your copy of Heat 2. And I was reading it, and I was actually really impressed by, like, how much, like, it stayed in, like never mind the fact that it's been, like, almost 30 years. But how much of it's pretty true. Like, I just finished Heat. I'm reading Heat 2, and I'm like, oh man, like this is it's not like it's pretty like it's like it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a book made 30 years ago or 30 years after the film. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think
brings you right back into the Heat universe immediately, which I blown away. Really cool. We're gonna do a whole episode on Heat 2 later.
We are.
I think we got to it.
Well, if they're gonna make the movie,
I'll do it on the book.
Like I wouldn't mind doing like a book club thing and just like read it. I honestly wouldn't mind it.
All right. I'll do that. But I think I guess if we're gonna do that later, fine. But the reason why that doesn't feel like a legacy sequel made 30 years later is because Mann absolutely had the backstories of Macaulay and Hannah, and not just that, but also Chris and Charlene and Sizemore's character and probably Haysbert's character. He had all of that mapped out in great detail in 1992 when he made LA Takedown.
Yep.
The only other nitpick I had is, and part of the reason maybe why I feel like De Niro kind of wins out in this movie over Pacino, as much as it's a two-hander, is De Niro is so much more believable as a like physical force badass, whereas Pacino looks like a small, older, middle-aged man. And when he has to like manhandle Henry Rollins, I'm like,
sure.
Oh man, Henry Rollins, you got to work overtime to sell this.
He has such swagger. He has so much swagger walking into a scene, like there is no one, he top dogs every single scene partner he has in this other than De Niro. So I can roll with that. And I've seen him playing cops enough that the image of him with his floppy hair and his black on black suit, I'm used to it. It's how a cop looks to me. It's fine. And he's Al Pacino. He's got charisma for miles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, like
I
these are real nitpicks.
Yeah. Right. Like it's just like like it's not about like it ruins the movie, but like just small things. Like like for me, there's like one shot like when Neela's running that looks kind of goofy. It's when during like the climactic airplane scene. There's like a shot. I'm pretty sure it might have been a stunt double, but it looked like super goofy in a way that like it's like I don't know exactly what scene it is or what frame it is, but he's like running across the field to the airplane, and I'm pretty sure it's like a stunt double or whatever. And it kind of took me out of the movie momentarily because it was a little goofy. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah.
There's just like one shot where you could put yakety sax under it, and it would kind of work.
The whole exit where he sees Edie and has to run the other way.
Yeah,
that's the scene, right? That's the yakety sax scene.
Well, you could also do. I think you could probably edit a pretty good "Always Sunny" credits cut for him turning around to get Wangro.
Oh yeah.
If we're getting really hyper granular, Ted Levine's death, I've now watched so many times that there is something funny about the way he seizes up, almost like one of the raccoon mask robbers in the Christmas Story fantasy sequence when they get hit by a BB and they just suddenly like go into a rictus like and he's just on the ground like with rigor mortis set in immediately.
Yeah.
That is a very specific reference. Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah, that's a little silly, but it's it's still, I don't know. I think it's supposed to be shocking, I guess.
Yeah, it's quick.
And it is. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But look, it's the greatest shootout ever. Let's not. I don't want to get twisted
Right.
here. I'm not saying it's
Can we
silly.
talk about it?
Yes. It's time to talk about the shootout. So the big shootout here. The bank heist. One of the all-time great action scenes in the history of movies would be my argument. I think I chose this when we did an action movie draft.
I don't think anyone would disagree or would fight you on that one. I mean, like, if someone said the best, I mean, sure, maybe, but like one of course, I think it's just an amazing sequence all around, and it still shocks me, like, watching this, like, years later, how visceral it is. It is quite shocking.
How loud it is. I mean,
that's the key, right? The sound effects. That's why it's so great.
yeah, we love to talk about sound mixes as being the thing that elevates movies or drags them down on this. I mean, it's a gripe we have with a lot of modern movies, the way that, like, you have to turn the volume on your TV up to 75 for dialogue scenes, and then there's a car chase and it just blows out your speakers. And, like, this has that differential, but it feels so much more purposeful. It's because it is so real. I think they're even, like, they recorded actual gunshot sounds on the day.
Right. I think that's what I've heard.
Yeah. And it's just because Michael Mann. It's because it's about realism here, and not just about trying to juice up something the way that in a less confident movie.
I want you guys to do a thought experiment with me.
Okay.
I want you to take the scene from Heat, that fight, that shootout, and imagine it as if it was edited like a 2024 a film, like from 2024.
Well, by Michael Bay, for example.
Yes, and I want you to imagine that. And I want you to hate every vibe, like, hate it so much.
Well, it would just be a thing that washes over you. It wouldn't have any of the visceral thrill like that this sequence does. It wouldn't really register. You would probably have a real hard time with the geography of it. And the guns fire would feel like gunfire in a movie, and it does not feel like gunfire in a movie in Heat. That's why it's so shocking and upsetting. Honestly, it's. I
mean, they're also shooting cops.
They're
also shooting cops.
That's
where
fine.
Civilians are,
but just the noise you're hearing, it does not belong in the urban setting that you're looking at. Like, it's the sound of these assault rifles echoing off the sides of these office buildings and the side, and the cars and the sort of this metal cement corridor that they're in. It's so specific. It's not like it sounds in other movies. It just sounds like, oh shit, something's happening outside.
It sounds like urban warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is what it is. I mean, Mann talks about this also very specifically in a lot of interviews about how the whole idea of this is that these guys are so professional that they know what they're dealing with, and it's these police officers who are used to having overwhelming force over civilians and overwhelming firepower and force. And so when they say this in Heat 2 specifically, but I've heard him say in another interview too, that their idea is when you're ambushed, assault the ambush and drive right through it. That's what they're least ready for. They expect you to scramble like rats in a cage, and they know they've got bigger guns actually and know how to use them better than the cops do. And that all comes across in the scene so much. And it feels, like I said, so much more real and dangerous because, like, when Kilmer, they have those great shots of Kilmer, like, firing a machine gun in one direction and whirling around and firing back in the other direction and whirling back. And
yeah,
it's not framed exactly perfectly to show you exactly like what he's hitting. Like, the distances of it feel not quite cinematically perfect, so you can't really see all the impact of it. But you can tell he's tearing up those cars, and it just, more so than even a lot of the shaky cam stuff we deal with in the 21st century, it feels visceral and in your face and right there, and also kind of cleaner and more coherent.
And obviously that shot, I think, of the thing that starts it off with Val Kilmer walking, and he smiles, and and then sees the cops, and without even thinking, no hesitation, nothing, just immediate, dude, like, everything goes to hell. Like, it's kind of amazing because, again, and it kind of goes back to what I'm saying, where I don't think this film scene gets made without heavy alterations. One of them would be, because we need to side with these guys, we would have some, like, moment to God, coming to God moment where we're shooting cops, or we're trying not to shoot cops, or something like that.
What you would get for sure is a slow motion zoom in on Kilmer's realization that there are cops there when the bus passes by, and like communicating that to De Niro, and De Niro looking over in slow motion and seeing them, and the cops raising their guns in slow motion, and they would milk that moment. But instead, it's like the best goddamn edit in movie history.
It really is. Oh, so
the
good.
bus moves us. We see Studi and Williamson there with their guns raised, and by the time we come back to Chris, his gun is already up and he is firing. And we're like, no matter how many times you're so keyed up knowing for the 16th time we're watching this that the gunfight's about to kick off, and that edit shocks you every time.
It does. It's so immediate. It's so raw. It's so raw, and it's so good. But again, yeah, right. You wouldn't do it because you know they'd be like, oh well, this might make the audience turn the audience against these characters because they killed 3 cops. They don't mention it in the book, but there's absolutely shots where they shoot civilians too. Like there's a couple shots where you see like civilians get shot.
There's definitely when De Niro's pulling him into the grocery parking lot and stealing the car, he's just firing it. There's shots of civilians ducking from his machine gun fire at pretty close range. Like it's not softening that up at all.
And it kind of reminded me of.
I'm weirdly okay with De Niro killing civilians when he's being a professional. Between this and Ronin, I'm just like, well,
it is what it is.
Yeah, they got in the way. He's not going to go to jail for them.
Well, actually, okay, so this circles us back all the way to the way that they differentiate Waingro and get us on these guys' side despite their being cold-blooded killers.
Yeah.
And also, I think the central pleasure of Michael Mann movies, for me at least, but I think for most people that like them, it's watching highly competent men, it's always going to be men, doing moving confidently through very high stakes, complicated situations. We don't, and that's like the opening of Miami Vice. Even like we have to understand all the ins and outs of what they're doing, but we can tell from the performances and the amount of like research that has gone into every bit of production that I don't know exactly what these guys are doing to get this heist done, but they know what they're doing.
I mean, that describes Ferrari. It's not even crime.
Right.
It's that is seeing professionals do professional work is hugely appealing, and maybe no one's better at that than Mann.
Well, it's not any kind of professional necessarily, but it's high stakes professional. The way it's always crime with Michael Mann because it's life and death, split second stuff like that. And I had this thought actually. So I have this quarter baked sociological theory. Mann is obviously he's a man's man. These are guy movies, as much as my wife might have enjoyed Last Mohicans on some level, but maybe like part of the if you gender swap this, the female version of this is like a cooking show, where
isn't that just Widows?
What's that? Oh no, that's like a Michael Mann movie with a female cast. I'm saying if you're trying to recreate the pleasure of watching a professional perform a very complicated task very confidently, that is part of the appeal of cooking shows. Is my hypothesis.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay,
except there it's
a hell of a point to make, Al. Go on.
They walk you through it and explain it as they're doing it, and there's like a teaching, nurturing aspect to it. Whereas in a Man's Man movie, it's all about just brutal efficiency and doing it with as few words as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said, that's about a quarter baked. I'm going to take it to Rachel Ray and have her.
No, but I see exactly what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right.
Traditional gender roles of the type that Michael Mann, a boomer through and through, would have grown up. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And if I can get that to work out, it might explain how we ended up with the current cultural idea of somebody was trying to marry those two, like the popularity of these two things together and make it more appealing to a cooking show, appealing to men, is kind of how we developed this cultural idea that a commercial kitchen is this incredible gauntlet that will like ruin lesser men. Like this is the most intense place on earth.
It does. Like I watch some of those shows and like it does. I'm not gonna lie, those feel high stakes to me. I'm like,
oh man, like I don't think I could do what these guys are doing. Like that's like, yeah,
Hell's
So I'm
Kitchen,
like,
Yeah.
I believe is the name of the show. Yes.
They work hard to create that aesthetic. I mean, Iron Chef. I think the pitch of Iron Chef seems like, what if we did a cooking show in the style of Michael Mann? Like, give it the stakes of that.
Iron Chef is like the Running Man of cooking shows. It's-
is there a movie like this? Is there a movie that actually kind of like has that like aesthetic, or maybe kind of has that tension, like in terms of like cooking? Like, it has to be, right?
The show The Bear is kind of like attempting it. I find that show to be incredibly silly because of this idea that. But it's good. I can't accept that. I mean, I go and get an Italian beef once a week, and nobody ever has a heart attack behind the counter or fires a shot.
You don't believe that Joe McHale would just tell you to go kill yourself?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I went to Alinea where it's like Michelin star rated, it's really that brutal behind the scenes. But like, I don't know, man. The stakes are so low. You put the beef on the bun, you dip it in the juice, and it's done. Like it's, and if it takes
That's a
10 minutes,
spicy take. I was not expecting that. That's a spicy take.
But anyway, my point is: are there other versions of watching professionals just operate in these incredible, like,
Isn't crime?
Yeah, that non-crime versions.
I was reminded of when you said that the film God of Cookery, which is the what's the guy's name? The dude who did Kung Fu Hustle and
Yeah. I totally seen that movie, man. Oh yeah,
which is essentially a
Chow.
cooking show that is pitched at the Running Man level, I guess. It's a comedy.
It's a good idea.
It's a satire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how about Whiplash?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good call. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.
Or maybe like Rounders, like a certain, not gambling movies necessarily, but poker movies about people who are actually good at it. Because a lot of gambling movies are
Rounders
about
is
people who are
definitely
bad
trying
at
to
it.
do Michael Mann. Rounders is chasing the Michael Mann.
Yeah. I've never seen Rounders. I've heard a lot about
it's
it, but
great.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay.
It's fun.
But it is like a Michael Mann aesthetic. I mean, it's, I guess, crime adjacent even a little bit because they're like playing cards against mobsters. But there's no gunfights,
Right.
So anyway, I don't know. But that is the thing with Michael Mann movies that he does better than anybody else, I think, is just watching these fucking hyper competent men move confidently through situations that I would be paralyzed by indecision or fear to be even like in the vicinity of.
And to that end, we've talked about De Niro a little here. I do want to talk about it a little bit more because it is my contention he is the best Michael Mann protagonist. I think in the entire filmography, and I know that is high praise, but I think he is just like the perfect example of what a Michael Mann protagonist is. And I think this is a top 5 Robert De Niro performance, which is a huge deal. And when we talk about why we kind of gravitate toward Neil McCauley a little more than Vincent Hanna, I think a lot of that is just that De Niro is so fucking good in this movie and so incredibly charismatic and interesting and compelling.
Absolutely.
And he's also a little bit of the underdog. I feel like they said that with like at least one line. They talk about how, or Voight tells him like, this guy can hit and miss. You can't miss once. Like he's only got to catch you once. And so there is that feeling like De Niro's the one kind of pushing uphill on this.
Yeah.
We also have a tendency, like even more, even before, I think, despite Heat being pretty visceral, particularly in its violence, but I think we as an audience always tends to kind of side with the criminals because it always feels like an inevitability that like these guys are getting caught by the cops, right? And you want you want to believe that there is a path to getting money, getting out, and like being able to like live a life without having to worry about being poor or paying your bills. And I think there's a innate sympathy towards robbers for any crime film, but I think this one particularly, I think it kind of stretches it a lot. I think it relies so much on how charismatic Robert De Niro is that we're able to be like, we see him do these things and we know he's willing to go as far as just murk a bunch of people because he's not going back to jail. And he will, but we're still on his side anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a piece of work this is. What a performance. You know what I'm really, really impressed by every time I see it is his work with Amy Brenneman and the Edie scenes, which is kind of one of the toughest things to pull off, I think, in the script, with the amount of time that relationship has to actually play out,
Right.
the depth of it and the extent to which he wins her over, that could easily not be convincing, but it is. And I think it's just because De Niro finds the exact right tone for those scenes. I mean, it's probably the sexiest he's ever been in anything. I mean, just straight up.
Look, and I have to say this, but that's another thing where the imbalance between the De Niro Pacino side is felt because Pacino has some sexy scenes in this movie where I'm just kind of like,
I mean, it opens with him sleeping with his wife. Yeah. The movie opens with him sleeping with his wife.
Yeah, I said there's other scenes. I'd rather watch Wayne Grow kill the prostitute. I think.
That seems true to me too, though. That seems accurate. That relationship, she's, like they're deep into it, and it's bad in a lot of ways, and they both know it at that point.
I just mean in the beginning when they're rolling on the bed and he's making out in his gold chain with his chest hair. And I don't know. Just something about the Vincent Hanna character just feels like he smells like a pack of cigarettes.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Definitely.
And I think the movie actually is intentionally making that comparison between the two, where I think despite Neil, again, being a murderer, being a thief, there's more warmth to him. He has more. He's willing to empathize, and he wants to. Like he absolutely wants someone to share in his world, and Vincent does not. Like he doesn't. The man is going to die alone, and he knows that, and he embraces that.
Mm-hmm. But and
until he doesn't, and shatters the entire world he built around the premise that he was going to die alone.
Yeah, and he doesn't play it like I'm lonely either. Like there's no sad sack to it. It's just sort of like he sees a problem with his worldview and moves to address it. And I think part of that is what's going on with Chris and Charlene, and part of it is just Edie. And man, that scene when they're out at his empty house, talking about how the city looks like bioluminescent algae. It's just sexy. It's just
that's at her house.
It's her house,
Is
right?
that her house?
His house is the empty one looking out over the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Oh, okay. I was like, man, like she was able to shoot a house like that. Dang.
Well, she talks about how it's not a nice house, but it's got a great view. Before they cut to them there looking out over it. But yeah, his looks out over the ocean where you get that incredible, just like washed out
just
blue
a void
silhouette.
Yeah.
God. Nobody does machine gun battles like Mann. Nobody does a fucking middle-aged guy staring at the ocean like Michael Mann.
Oh, absolutely! It's so moody, and I that's the thing, though. I think it also says a lot. Like we talk about Mann being a professional, but I think underneath it all, I think Mann is a romantic, and I think that gets across with Neil, especially with Neil. Like Neil, absolutely. Like, again, he comes across. He wants to be this hardened criminal, but deep inside, he's a romantic. Like,
well, another way that they make, I think, the outlaw crew feel more appealing and more like a family and all that is that they are all family men, or they're all in committed romantic relationships. Like Vincent's got the rockiest marriage of anybody, but Neil is all in. Obviously, we're talking about Chris is incredibly devoted to Charlene. Sizemore has this wife that he's been to. Trejo doesn't want to live once his wife is dead. Haysbert's got this.
Wife, super supportive wife. Like, like we were talking about this the other day, Al. Like how like the Michael Mann protagonist is like absolutely like does not cheat. Like does not like he is committed to the relationship. Like
that is, I guess, something that feels a little false about it. Like, I mean, again, Michael Mann came through all this pretty honestly, and that like he spent time with cops and criminals in prison and everything, and he became fascinated with this type of criminal in prison who really devotes themselves to planning out what they want their life to be once they can get out, and how to pursue their goals with this incredible focus.
Yes.
Yeah, and part of that is that they're slow to get attachments, but when they commit to a romantic relationship, they're all in immediately, and that's con and thief, of course, as we talked about at that time. But
it's certainly Macaulay here. Yeah,
he has to know that a lot of criminals do cheat on their wives.
I mean,
pretty casually, and like even when like
a lot of cops do.
He feels more comfortable with that. But with Chris, when he mentions like, or Junior asks him if he's seeing anybody else, and he's like nothing regular. It's like sort of actually, he will sleep with other women, but he's still the overwhelming impression you get is that he's incredibly devoted to her. Like he goes right
It's
from
like-
that
like
to
those women I fuck, but you I make love.
Yeah.
well, he's not
Yeah,
saying it to her to like, snow her over or anything. He's saying to Neil one sentence later, like, for me, the sun rises and sets with her man.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the only kind of like romantic relationship I feel like man respects. And to the point where like maybe there could have been a little more diversity in the criminals here, but all 5 of Neil's crew outside of Wayne Grow, everybody's got their woman that they're incredibly committed to.
Mm-hmm. I like that the cops have a night out and the crooks have a night out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they were, I think the cops are surveilling the crook party, and then they're like, "That looked fun. We should do that."
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, one last quick word about De Niro. In a relationship, his usual vibe, and I think this contributes to why this works oddly, is that he's a terrible date. Is that
Yeah. No, he's
Like-
he's really bad. Like, no, you're absolutely right.
You know,
like,
Taxi Driver kind of sets the tone, but most De Niro movies, if you're on a first date with him, it's going to go bad, and it doesn't in this case. And this seems like a character where
He
it could go
tries to
bad.
get off on the wrong foot.
He does. He like really sabotages that relationship immediately. Like, why are you talking to me? It's, just it's amazing that he pulls it out. I'm so impressed by his performance because of these Edie scenes and that they work. She's great too.
so I have a quick
It's a
question.
real
I
balance,
have a quick question
Yep.
about the Edie scenes too.
Mhm.
Now, I was thinking about this too. Is it possible? Because like obviously you can tell, and I think it's like they are clearly mismatched in a way. In the fact that like Edie has nothing to do with the life at all. Do you think it's more about an escape for Neil, or do you think he really fell in love with her? Because I feel like you can kind of read it maybe both ways.
I would
Yeah,
I would agree that you can do it both ways. I think they are I think they'd be a good couple. I think they'd enjoy being quiet and reading books together. Like it would be okay.
Yeah, I don't think that those two things separate out from each other cleanly.
Right. Okay.
Which is to the movie's credit. That it is partly about she definitely opens his eyes to possibilities that he hadn't seen before that go beyond that. Yeah, that are just another way of living. But I don't think she's entirely just a representational icon of that alternate path to him. I think he does actually like her.
Yeah, more so than I would say James Caan in Thief. I think that is a more of a just willed that relationship into being.
Yeah,
kind of
I
situation.
actually watched Thief recently, and I think I remember. I think actually thinking that as much as I know I did say at the beginning of the podcast about how much Thief means to me.
It
I think
fucking rules.
watching
It's a great
now,
movie. Yeah.
As an adult, there are some things that kind of stand out that kind of do bother me. Just because of like who I am now as a person, and like kind of one of my my personal morality beliefs. Like there's something where you're absolutely right. Like James Camp basically like forces that relationship to fruition, like straight up forces it, and it is kind of uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, no, I mean nobody's going to recommend Thief on the basis of its great gender politics. That's yeah. Well, I think Heat progresses those types of dynamics for man, at least, in that it seems more clear eyed about how bad these relationships are for the women. None more so than Trejo's wife. That is actually the grimmest, just like sort of quick pan past her lying naked on on the bed of a blood-stained walls room, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things got real nasty in that they brush right by. But again, it's not really salacious in how it presents that because it goes by it so
I think
fast.
it's actually what makes it have more of an effect because of it.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is super grim.
And we know because of the Wayne Grow scene earlier that we were questioning whether it was necessary. We can scroll or pan past that in half a second and be like, oh man, that's grim. But anyway, Trejo also pretty good in his death scene.
Yeah.
He's very unpolished as an actor at this point, but
When did he first get started? When did Danny Trejo just get started? Like, was this one of his main?
No, he'd been in probably 30 movies by this point.
yeah, I don't know that he'd had a lot of speaking roles though. I think he started with like 10 or 15 non-speaking roles, but I don't know exactly.
I mean, he was one of those guys who kind of was like an on-set advisor, and then bumped him up to extra, and then give him some lines.
Right, because he was actually in the life, right? He was in the
Oh
life,
yeah,
right?
he was
Yeah.
in jail, the whole thing.
Yeah.
They were shooting a boxing movie in a prison, and he was like a consultant to help him. He was a boxer
Natural
in
fit
prison.
for Michael Mann, as it turns out.
Oh yeah, perfect. I'm surprised he's not in as many as Farina, but
Yeah. Is he in any more? Does he pop up in Collateral? He should.
yeah, he's got to be a cartel guy somewhere in Miami Vice or Collateral or one of these.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Never.
one thing I wanted to, I mean, we can talk about the very end of the movie.
It's great.
But
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I appreciate about
Absolutely
this,
beautiful. It's
one thing that's kind of awesome about this movie is that surprises you almost a little every time is just how much movie there is left after that big shootout happens. You're like, man, there is a whole hour still. And I will say that the final chase and shootout at the airport is a little anticlimactic compared to that giant crazy shootout. Sometimes I will end Heat a little early because I've just seen it so many times. And once he runs away from the hotel, I'm just like, okay, yeah, I know how this goes. But I appreciate this movie ends right when it's over. You know what I mean?
the final shot's amazing. That final shot is incredible with the soundtrack, which we haven't talked about at all. But the soundtrack for this movie is just perfect. Like it's just amazing, and just the music that's playing as it closes out with De Niro holding Robert. I mean, not De Niro, but Pacino holding Robert De Niro's hand. It's just a beautiful it's just a beautiful final scene. I really enjoyed that moment. Such a great way to close out that movie.
It's the only way it could end, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for a 3-hour epic, there's definitely a temptation to do some codas or even text on the screen to tell you Chris Shirless was arrested on the Nevada border later. It could be a lot of different ways to do that, but it knows.
Had to save it all for the book, man. You had to save it all for the book.
Well, and he's so clear-eyed about it. It's all about this relationship, and when this relationship is over, the movie's over, and that's it.
There's a focus that I really appreciate. That I think that absolutely, and I think that's why, despite the fact this is almost 3 hours, obviously, there's a lot of debate currently now with movies being so super long, and
this one,
and I feel like this movie is
flies
only
by.
3 hours, but I don't feel it at all.
I remember feeling it when I was a kid. When I was first time I saw this, I thought it was too long, and now I really don't. Now it feels 2 hours long to me, honestly.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I was actually kind of periodically looking, because I'm watching it on my laptop. Periodically looking at the time, oh man, an hour and a half already passed? Huh?
Yeah. When as an adult, I'm like, I want more Fichtner.
Yeah, totally.
Can we meet with?
He's really good.
Can we do 2 more scenes of them meeting with Tom Noonan up on this hill, as the wheelchair?
Yeah. I mean, I think when every scene is good, which is the case in Heat, I think.
Yeah.
Give or take a Natalie Portman. I
think we're underselling her.
Probably.
I don't think
she's not a problem. It's a thing for him to deal with. Another thing that he's got going on his plate, and it doesn't really get his full attention because how could it? But then it turns out, oh shit.
But I think that's the one thing. When I think, kind of going back to kind of what I was talking about with Al Pacino, I think you mentioned, John, that he does somewhat care. And he clearly does. When he finds Portman in the bathtub, he clearly that's probably the one time where he's oh shit, and he actually does. Not, it doesn't feel like he's just doing it just to do it, but he does feel emotionally in it. That he does deep down actually really care for her.
I mean, he sees the stuff that he sees on his job at home.
Yeah, as I say, the sort of grimmer, less flattering take on that is that her suicide attempt or gesture fully succeeds in that it brings the intensity of his job that he's always ignoring them for to her, and so she gets his attention by being as fucked up as what he's dealing with out on the streets.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Well, why she chose them. Yeah, that actually might be. Yeah, you might be right on that one.
Yeah. Oh, and one of the other nitpicks that I might have cited at one point was some of Justine, the wife's speeches to him about his lifestyle feel a little overwrought and overcooked.
Yes, I agree.
Except
I do agree. Yeah.
As I'm watching it more recently, I'm kind of but actually, I think what this is that she has spent a lot of time crafting this script in her head.
I certainly do that
before having this conversation. Yeah. Maybe seeing it as a married man, maybe the
Xander Berkeley scene.
You've thought about
in
this,
particular, the the way that the Xander Berkeley scene plays out is fabulous writing. What's his name?
He's
in it?
there, Ralph.
You know,
She
maybe
has
if
to
you
beat
were around,
herself
I wouldn't have to
herself.
humiliate myself with Ralph over here. Just
That is such an incredible scene. He is ostensibly, on paper, cucking Al Pacino, hot dog cop of the LA Police Department.
but he
He
comes
is,
off
is
like
the total cuck of all cucks.
he really is. Oh man, yeah.
They're just shitting on him
That's
as he
a great
sits
moment.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We have one last thing we have to do here, which we do on a rare occasion. Chris, I'm sorry we didn't prepare you for this, but we have a very rare recurring segment where we cast the Muppet version of a movie.
yeah,
And for
Muppet
Heat,
Heat.
we have got to do Muppet Heat, right?
yeah, it's uniquely suited to the Muppets. I think, right? Like,
Well, it has almost exactly as sprawling of a cast as there are Muppets.
yeah, uh-huh. And
I think it's clear that the Vincent Hanna has to be Miss Piggy.
okay, very interesting. I wanted.
She's the only one who can do, who can come in, and if you have Ratso Rizzo or whatever, Rizzo the Rat playing Albert, she can come in and throw him off that way.
Okay. See, that's pretty good. That's actually really good. Who's Neil McCauley though? Is it Kermit?
I mean, do we just go for the obvious one? I'm not going to go with Kermit, right? That I do find it particularly funny. If it was just Kermit,
Put a little goatee on him. Yeah, I think Kermit was my Neil McCauley.
I think Kermit might just be Piggy's third husband. He's the Justine character, and maybe Neil McCauley.
Wait. Are you saying that Miss Piggy is Vincent?
Yes, absolutely. I will not budge on that.
Oh, I absolutely love that.
That's really good. That's really good, actually. I just had. I was thinking. Well, I guess Kermit's Neil McCauley, so I guess Miss Piggy will have to be Edie, which I was never really comfortable with.
I think Neil might be the lone human.
I thought Vincent Hanna was the lone human. I thought I was going to have Will Smith and Kermit the Frog facing off. God, that was my thinking. But no, if Miss Piggy fits as Hannah, that frees up McCauley to be the lone human.
I kind of really like that a lot. Yeah, I'm thinking of the scenes in my head, and I think it's really funny.
And I think
So Gonzo as Neil?
okay, no, Gonzo has to be Chris, the Val Kilmer.
Yes,
character.
I agree with that.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Is it for the same reason I have, which is that it allows you to do the scene where Charlene is waving him off, and he is waved off in this intense police standoff by a chicken. Because Gonzo's always kind of in a relationship with a
That's
chicken.
good. That's good. Yes.
So would the Swedish
Very
chef
good.
be what's his face? Nate?
Well, Nate, there's a lot of people who could do Nate.
Yeah, that's actually boy could go in so many different ways. I think Sam the Eagle is a possibility there,
Ooh, no. Sam
He
Neill
looks
would
like
be
or he could be Neil. Actually, maybe
No, he
he's
can't.
not important enough as a okay.
No, I
He's
think
he's kind of a De Niro character.
if Miss Piggy is Vincent Hanna, I think we need a human. I think we need our lead human to be Neil McCauley.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I actually don't agree with that.
Mm.
What if it's Keanu Reeves?
It's Keanu Reeves, and that's
Yeah.
so.
We're building to the Miss Piggy Keanu Reeves diner scene for the first half of the movie.
I think the only other human, I think Fichtner is a human. Like, because
Yeah,
the
or-
Muppet kicking around some kind of villainous human is kind of fun.
Well, would Wayne Grow be a human? I would.
No,
think
Wayne Grows Fozzie. I thought just because. I mean, look, the
No.
Muppet version.
No,
Yo.
Fozzie is Bosco. Fozzie is a clear Bosco.
Chris, every time we've done this, John has come hard out that Fozzie is a piece of shit. And so I thought because of that, but also look in the Muppet version, you're not going to be murdering prostitutes. It's going to be toned down. But Fozzie is a fuck up enough to be the sloppy one in the crew.
Fozzie's a fuck up. Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, I do like shitting on Fozzie. Okay.
Sizemore's animal. I think we can all agree, right?
Ooh.
Oh, that's good. He was going to be a human in mine. I was thinking Bobby Cannavale and the rest were Muppets. But no, I think Animal's good. That's
I guess
good.
the obvious one would be Winger would be Animal, but that's I think I like that one better. Sizemore as Animal.
Yeah.
I got a real good one here. Rolf the dog is Breeden.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Yeah.
You could almost make him Drucker, the Michael T. Williams character, but I think Haysbert's better.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you just slot him in anywhere. It's amazing to me how defined this ensemble is. Like, I know all these characters' names. I know, I know what differentiates Bosco from Castles. You know, like it's great that they've filled out this cast with characters like, well, Trejo, obviously that's your Rizzo the Rat. You know,
Right.
it's a lot of
No,
fun.
that's Albert. That's the one that's the informant's getting kicked around, or Hank Azaria. That thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with
It's
that.
good, yeah.
Like Trejo, Trejo had he's a good guy.
Okay.
Or is okay.
Well, Pepe the Prawn is right there as well.
Yeah,
So.
is Pepe the Prawn Tone Loc, or I mean, he could even be the Nate figure. We have so many void possibilities here.
Oh no, Nate, you can do Doc. Doc doesn't get much play anymore, but he's perfect. You can do Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and have Beaker.
Well, he's
as
Kelso,
Tom
right?
Noonan. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Or Beaker is Tom. Okay, yeah. What
Yeah. Or you can do Statler and Waldorf, both as Nate. You know, we got
thought
old
about
Muppets. Yeah.
I think you got to make Sweetums be either Trejo or Bosco. Probably Trejo.
I was thinking Drucker for Sweetums.
Okay. Yeah, that works. I mean, Bosco and okay.
Hey, guys, I actually have to get going soon.
Oh no,
unfortunately.
sure.
Yeah.
Surely you're not running away because of this Muppet thing.
No, absolutely not. You know.
Okay. All right. That's enough Muppet talk. Let's all go out on just all naming one singular moment, tiny little moment in Heat that abounds with them, that sticks with you. I love the bit. Okay, I mean, when they're deciding to hit the bank, and Kilmer's got his intense I need it, brother. The bank's worth the stretch thing, and then Sizemore has his Oscar reel, really just going straight at De Niro's neck and doing that. For me, the action is the juice. I mean, that's why you need Animal for that. So you need to go, action is juice. But the way they follow that up with they turn to Trejo and Trejo just goes, yeah, all right, sure. It's a nice comedic cap on that scene. And it's, there's not a lot of comedy in Mann movies, but it's perfect because they also realize that we can't do a third intense, soul searching monologue thing here, So it's just such a perfect choice there. And maybe Trejo's not, as an actor, not ready for one anyway, but it's put such a great button on that scene. I love that. Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
This is tough. There's so many little moments, but what I'm going to go with is just one of my favorite moments is the conversation over the phone between William Fichtner and De Niro.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's no, I'm talking to an empty phone here because there's a dead man on the other end of it.
It's such a baller fucking thing to say to someone.
Just the look on
so cold.
Fichtner's face is where he realizes he's definitely going to kill me. It's and disappears for the rest of the film until he does indeed.
Until he dies, yeah. Which is I'm hold on, this guy's gonna kill you. I guess he thought that since they dropped the dime on the team, they would have been fucked at the bank. So they wasn't expecting him.
The plot to kill him at the drive-in, the whole he just he's an idiot. Didn't realize what he was dealing with, and the framing of De Niro in that scene in front of the oven in the kitchen. It's so great. Okay, that's my scene. Talking to a dead man.
Yeah, I think my scene it's not a line of dialogue, but it is a moment where I really like that moment where they're tracking Neil on the highway, and Al Pacino, he's on the helicopter, and he gets in the car and he starts driving, and I think that whole moment it's just such a vibe where he's just driving in the dark of the night. You have that the atmospheric soundtrack. It's kind of obviously it reminds me a lot of the Miami Vice scene with the
iconic Phil Collins song.
It's such a vibe moment that I really dug that. And there's plenty of moments like that throughout that it literally just is a vibe. But I think that one in particular, that one sticks to me.
Oh man, we didn't even talk about the part where they lure the cops to the port.
They're watching us. They're watching us.
All right, motherfucker. Oh, it's so good. But we've hit our 90-minute mark. We know we have measured the LAPD's response time. We know we have to get out of here right now.
Okay.
Nope. Don't go home. Don't pack. Scatter.
That is why I thought you was cool like that.